Chapter 24, Awakening. The three children smelled the food and quickly washed up, took napkins, sat neatly in their positions, and looked at the kitchen door expectantly. Well, the children looked at the fragrant food on the table, opened their small mouths, and drooled, looking like hungry little devils. Durua was really angry, rolling her eyes. Did she wrong them? Seeing their father making food, why did they act like they hadn't eaten something delicious for a long time? Hurry up and eat. Chishan laughed softly, one by one, giving the food to the three little darlings. Looking at the man beside them happily serving the children, Durua felt miraculous. A few years ago, he only knew how to make fried eggs, but now he could make a table of food like this. Night. Ah. Ah. So comfortable, with great difficulty coaxing the three little devils to sleep, Chishan enjoyed lying on the bed, occasionally making a dreamy moaning sound. Durua looked at her husband amusedly. Is it that comfortable? Suddenly, he turned around, pulled her down from his back and sat her on it, causing her to exclaim in shock, "What are you doing? I haven't finished pressing it yet." She struggled to stand up, angrily glaring at the person who was smiling happily. "What's wrong with you tonight? Huh?" She was burying her head and pressing her hand on his back. Hearing that, she raised her head in surprise. He changed his position a bit, so that he and she could lie comfortably together. "Tonight, you're still frowning." He reached out a delicate hand to gently stroke her beautiful eyelashes. Suddenly, the woman in his arms turned around and pressed against his body, her eyes unwaveringly looking at him from top to bottom. He was stared at until he felt scared, his eyebrows furrowed, teasingly saying, "Or, did you suddenly feel that your husband is too handsome? Love me more?" He was silent, sinking. "Chishan, I love you." Just when he finally couldn't maintain the smile on his face, she suddenly hugged his waist, burying her pretty little face in his chest, transmitting vague, unclear words. His body suddenly stiffened, his hand involuntarily tightly hugged her soft body. When he recovered his senses, he used just enough force, lifted the woman up, forehead to forehead, nose to nose, without blinking, looked at the face that he doubted he would ever get tired of looking at in this life. His face was bright, his eyes were deep. No? Finally no, he was uneasy. Married for a few years, he lived with her. The more he discovered that he did not understand her. Even though he knew his worries were unnecessary, but knowing how outstanding she was, even though he felt proud in his heart, very lucky, he always could not help but always be afraid. There were a few times when she was abroad. At night he would suddenly wake up, always feeling that the happiness now was not real. Always worried that in the next second, it would be crushed. If he had not returned in time before, would the woman in his arms not belong to him? Just thinking about this, his body and heart were both empty, very painful. His two hands held her face, a trace of gloom appeared in the depths of his eyes, kissing hard. This woman could only belong to him in this life. Durua, I love you. He loved her, like being bitten by ants in his heart, bit by bit pouring into his marrow, seeping into his blood. Really love her. She suddenly felt the world spinning, in her heart, a wave of shock passed by that no one could ignore. She raised her head, accepting his kiss. The domineering kiss also carried gentleness, sometimes graceful, sometimes urgent, but, she smiled softly, her eyes lingeringly looked at him, listening to her husband's low and lingering whispers, following her husband's movements, her whole body and heart felt his love. This night, he seemed to want to pass on all his anxiety and love to her, the two of them just like that, time and time again, immersed in extreme pleasure and madness. Until both of them were exhausted, they tightly embraced each other, falling into a deep sleep. Waiting for his breathing to become steady, she opened her eyes, slightly jerked her neck, immediately her back was tightened a bit, she stopped breathing, and did not move, afraid of waking him up. Her eyes gently swept across his resolute face. This man, even after going through so many lives, cooking was almost like theory to her. She had too few opportunities to cook. The aristocratic family lived a comfortable and happy life, living in the deep palace, although they studied theory, but inside the cold palace, where was there any opportunity for you to practice? The remaining generations of doctors, if not casually dealing with it, would also eat at the patient's home. When she was reborn, if it wasn't Aunt Lou, it would be Aunt Lee. When she came to America, she hired a nanny, and there was no need for her to do it herself. Thinking back to when she had just gotten married, after someone knew what the most pampering wife was, he went into the kitchen without saying a word, and has been doing it ever since. Until tonight, she looked at this dinner, suddenly felt, no matter this marriage or this relationship, no matter the previous life or this entire life, in fact, he paid more than her, clearly trained for a day, but still entered the kitchen as usual, this person in front of her eyes, always silently tolerated herself, endured herself. She thought, perhaps it was because her mother couldn't stand it, worried that she would once again not understand how to cherish, make mistakes with the person who loved her, that she couldn't help but warn her. Thinking of this, she hugged him tightly, pressed her ear close to his chest, listened to his heartbeat. Slowly entered a sweet dream. How? How? Did you ask? Xiao Xian just returned to the Qiao family, saw her mother already waiting for her at the main door. As soon as she saw her get out of the car, she hurriedly asked. Xiao Xian didn't know why she suddenly wanted to ask for news about Du Rua. Thinking about that half-sister, she had already left. Why did she still want to mention that person at home? Mom, I already asked, that person doesn't know either. Thinking of Xiangxing sneering at her, Xiao Xian immediately felt worried, really didn't know why. In order to find that person, she forced herself to endure this treatment. Yi Jingye heard Xiao Xian's words, then her face immediately fell, basically didn't pay attention to Xiao Xian's expression, and turned around and went into the house. How? Did Xian hear the news? Xiao Ligua saw Yi Jingye entering the room, hurriedly pulled her back. Yi Jingye looked towards the man she had spent all her effort to get, angrily said, "No." Then what should we do? If that money isn't returned soon, someone will find out about me very soon. Xiao Ligua rumpled his hair in defeat. Right now, only that girl has that money. If he wanted to use his own money to make up for it, it wasn't a small sum of money for the Qiao family, so he had to find that girl, just find that girl, tell her, after all, she had that much money. Not mentioning it, but when Du Rua's money was mentioned, Yi Jingya immediately felt her heart was bleeding, and she quickly said, "If you had told me earlier, your daughter had that much money, there wouldn't be today." She definitely wouldn't have intentionally targeted that girl like that. She would definitely make her hand over that property before chasing her out. This was also good, if not for the fact that this time the embezzlement case of N City might have involved Xiao Ligua. He wanted to find money to make up for the shortfall. While accidentally mentioning that Du Rua had inherited a large sum of money, she didn't even know that Du Rua had so much money in her hands. What would you say if you knew so early? Xiao Ligua didn't think that his always gentle wife would refute him like this. Immediately he was so embarrassed that he became angry, loudly shouted at Yi Jingya, That's not. Feeling that people have left your Qiao family, yet want to ask for money, yet want to pretend to be noble, not knowing that people have just left for 5-6 years, basically don't put your Qiao family in their eyes. In Yi Jingya's heart, she thought disdainfully, but on her face she was still gentle and kind. That's right. Right now the most important thing is to find Rua back. Find her back, then make her hand over that large sum of money. Sigh, that poor child, without family to take care of her, doesn't know how much suffering she's had outside. Right. That's right. Must find her back sooner. Her father is still alive, no one can bully my daughter. Xiao Ligua strongly defended his dignity, feeling that it was like that, he pitied that girl, only looking for her back because he felt sorry for her. So to speak, some people, shamelessness, is limitless. Sister-in-law, your house is really beautifully arranged. Zhao Xiaoman sat in the living room, observing the living room for a while, and couldn't help but sigh. After a few days, everyone in the army was familiar with the family of the 3rd Squad captain. As long as they mentioned the 3 children, everyone's expression was filled with smiles, so adorable. However, Captain Chi's wife was actually different from everyone's expectations. When they first started living together, they were still nervous. After a few days, everyone was no longer so reserved. Haha, the rooms are all the same. The household items were moved in the next day. And it took the family a few days to slowly arrange them. The specific arrangements were only arranged based on Durua's preferences. In fact, the structure of the rooms distributed by the army is the same, the basic arrangement inside is also the same, but because of that, Zhao Xiaoman just sighed, the rooms are the same, in other people's houses there is nothing special at first glance, but for some reason, she always feels that the arrangement like this has an ancient style, especially some things that are not too easy to see. She is increasingly curious about this sister-in-law. My Jingwu is so small, but also knows that your house is good-looking. When he comes back all day he asks me to arrange his small room beautifully like yours. Those are the three little darlings who arranged it according to their own ideas. I think that room is quite messy. Durua gently rubbed her eyebrows. The three children's personalities were different, and it was clearly shown in the room. But they had a good relationship, and were not willing to separate the bedrooms at all. In one room, there were 3 small beds, a small study table, a small wardrobe, and a small bookcase. These 3 were not the same color as the household items. In her heart, she couldn't help but feel lucky. Luckily, the children didn't have any requests for different wallpaper. Strangely, the appearance of this room still seemed exceptionally coordinated. Yang Xingxing sat beside her, pouting. Such a young child could arrange a room. She was trying to fool someone. What? That's a good method. Zhao Xiaoman's eyes lit up. She felt that it was a good method to train the child, but she had forgotten that her Jingwu was only 2 years old. Seeing Zhao Xiaoman taking the initiative, Durua also cooperated. The 3 of them chatted until all the men had returned before they dispersed. You are also a master. Are you still afraid that you won't be able to teach your child well? Why do you have to drag the squad leader's wife into getting acquainted? After Qi's family left, Yang Xingxing urgently reprimanded. Zhao Xiaoman helplessly looked at her good friend. Xingxing, you don't need to be like this. It will offend people. She knew Yang Xingxing's way of doing things. Although she was quite arrogant, she didn't mean anything bad, so their relationship in the past 3 years was not bad. Yang Xingxing didn't wait for Zhao Xiaoman to finish speaking, and said, I heard from Kaiqing that she doesn't have a job. What's so special about someone like that? She relies on her man to support her. Yang Xingxing hugged her chest with both hands, impatiently turning her head to the side. I don't understand, what are you doing this for? She's inherently very incompetent. A military wife is also a person. People gathered together, there will be comparisons. Having a high degree, a good family background, having a job will make people admire. So Yang Xingxing always felt proud of herself being from the city, having a master's degree and having a good job, even though Zhao Xiaoman's family had more money than her, but because of her rural household registration, she was a little inferior to her. Looking at Yang Xingxing's figure speaking rashly and angrily walking forward, Zhao Xiaoman helplessly sucked in her breath. Forget it. In any case, looking at her sister-in-law's appearance, she wouldn't argue with Xingxing. Besides, she would be there to mediate, so nothing would happen. The 3 little darlings saw that the guests had left, so they let go of the toy in their hands, and with a thud, they crawled onto Durua's legs. Looking at the fluent and skillful movements, they knew that it wasn't something that could be trained in a day or 2. What's wrong? She always had infinite patience for the 3 little darlings. Mom, we miss our great-grandfather and grandpa and grandma. Hao rubbed his mother's neck. His clever eyes rolling. Then you guys should call back. She lovingly touched her child's velvety hair. It turned out that she missed the old man. Qishan would have a day off in a few days, and they could return together. After Qishan finished bathing and came out, he immediately held her on his lap. What are you chatting about that you can chat so much about? How could he not know that his wife was gossiping with others? Chatting with my 3 treasures. It was still early, and there was no rush to make dinner. The family of 5 just sat there chatting. Oh, right, she raised her head from his shoulder. Commissar Yang, do you not have children yet? She felt that it would be better to talk to him. Why? Why did she suddenly think of this and ask, Married for several years, still no children. That's why he always felt that he was very lucky. He had a beautiful wife and smart children. Looking at the 3 little ones, 2 more than others. Yang Xingxing has a cold constitution. and is very serious, she probably can't get pregnant. She patted the three little ones' heads, making them return to the room to play. She still felt very strange. This bad habit at the moment shouldn't be very difficult to cure. How could it be? After he heard it, he immediately understood what she meant. She could cure it, but... He looked at her with both laughter and tears, pulled her over, pressed her on the sofa and kissed her deeply, until she was almost out of breath. He let her go. I will hurt you for others, huh? The last huh was full of threat, as if she nodded, he would kiss her again until she shook her head. Holding his head, I'm just telling you, just letting you know. Acting spoiled was a bit unnatural. He hugged her tightly, when she couldn't see. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but slightly raise. I know, if you can help, then help, but you can't wrong yourself. Don't think that he didn't see Yang Kaicheng's wife's attitude towards her. I know. She didn't think that there would be such a quick conclusion. Everyone living together would look carefully before speaking. As long as it wasn't something too difficult, she would help a little. Sooner or later they would know that she was a doctor. At the right time she would take the initiative to help. If she let people come to her door to ask, being passive like that, on the contrary, it wouldn't be good.